Good morning. Welcome to Hope, Faith, and Joy Daily Devotion with me, Pastor Amanda. It is Friday. Yay. But we are going to still have our devotion for Friday, and then we'll meet back up together again on Monday. So today in chapter 21, we finally have God's fulfillment of God's promise to Sarah and to Abraham that she will bear a son. And so we're told that she has conceived a son, and Abraham gave him the name of Isaac, again reminding us that that's the name that says he laughs. And then what's kind of interesting here is if we remember back to the covenant that Abraham made earlier with God, was that now the household would be circumcised at the age of 8 days old. And so what we find out is that Isaac really is the first one to fully be in that covenant, because everybody else was adults and teenagers and all of that kind of stuff. So Isaac is really the first one that the covenant is being really brought into fulfillment with. And so he's the first one at 8 days old that has this done. And then of course then we see that Sarah says, like, this child brings me laughter because can you believe it? I was able to bore a son at this age. And so we have that. But again, we have that human factor that always seems to play out. And we find that at one point in time, Sarah is watching Ishmael and Isaac playing together. And her jealousy, her concern, whatever you want to say it is, kind of plays out. And she tells Abraham, get rid of that child, because I don't want that child experiencing any of the inheritance that belongs to our son Isaac. And we have this moment where Abraham is like, I can't do that. That's my son also. And what happens is that God and Abraham in this moment, God goes, listen to Sarah. Like, I made that my covenant with you was originally with you and Sarah, but I will also watch over Ishmael and Hagar if you send them on their way. And I think again what we're seeing is really a very compassionate God in this, because what happened is that it's Abraham's mistake, Abraham's lack of faith that brought Ishmael into this world. And so God goes like, you know, I'll still take care of them. I'm not going to actually punish you for your mistake, but I'm going to still take care of this son. But knowing my covenant was with you and Sarah, I'm also going to live out my covenant. But again, also what we're also seeing is a God who doesn't have to live by the rules of society. Because the reality is Ishmael was the firstborn, Ishmael deserved it. And so, but it's the second son that's going to get the inheritance. And we're going to see that throughout Genesis, where it's not always society's assumed that receives what they're supposed to, but it's who God makes promises to or sees their heart. We're going to see that play out throughout. So anyways, we find that Ishmael and Hagar are out in the wilderness, and there becomes a desperate moment in Hagar's wanderings that she's run out of water and she doesn't know what to do, and she sets Ishmael down and she kind of walks away and she goes, I can't watch my child die. I can't do it. And she kind of starts crying. And then the angel of the Lord hears her cry and says, pick up your child. We'll take care of you. And what we find out is that that's exactly what God does, and that Ishmael became quite a good man, and that he lived in the wilderness. He became an expert with the bow. and his mother found him a wife in Egypt, and so he's still able to live a fruitful life. He is not punished for his father's sins. I think that's important because a lot of times in the scriptures we see that the culture would say a child should be punished for the father's sins. But here we see the compassion of God, that the child has his own gifts and things, that he's not punished for his father's sin. So then we have another story that starts up in about verse 22 of chapter 21. And Abimelech comes back into the picture, and he recognizes that Abraham and him are having some good dealings with each other, and wants to make a covenant with him. And Abraham points out that there's a well that there's some concern over, who has dug it and everything like that. And so Abraham offers him some lambs and says, like, this is my sign that this is my well. And so Abimelech says, well, I wasn't aware of that, so let's just take care of this. We'll have a covenant. We're going to be peaceful together. And so what we kind of see in this is finally Abraham is starting to live into the promises given to him. He didn't have to lie about this situation. He didn't have to try to figure a way out of it. He trusts that God's working with him in and through him, and he recognizes he can deal with the strangers that he's encountering. He's remembering he's the alien in the land and everything. And so, but we have this just kind of this nice little moment in where we recognize that Abraham, his prosperity is growing, his name is being well known, and so we see God's promise slowly being fulfilled within this. And then it's kind of nice, we see that Abraham plants a tree at this point in near this well to mark this spot. And again, it's kind of like building an altar. It's one of those reminders of that, you know, God was working in this. We see God present, and just kind of a monument to what has happened here in this place, that two different people came together, they have an agreement, and they can live peacefully together. So chapter 21 is a really good one. We kind of start to see God's promises even through all of the mistakes and all the craziness that's happened. They're all coming together. And so I think that's a really good way to end the week. Though next week on Monday, we're gonna encounter one of the hardest chapters, I think, in Abraham's and Isaac's life together. But we'll take that easily. We'll enjoy our weekend, and thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next week. Bye.